Hello, welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Today, we are going to discuss the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 27th October 2018. The news to be discussed has been presented on the screen, and timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. Let's start our today's discussion. So, in our continuation with UPSC Mains 2018 discussions, today, let's discuss a question asked in GS Paper 2 specifically on the controversy related to EVM. Today, we'll discuss the first question asked in GS Paper 2. The question read, in light of recent controversy regarding the use of electronic voting machines, that is EVM, what are the challenges before the Election Commission of India to ensure the trustworthiness of elections in India? Now we understand that this particular question specifically talks about recent controversy on the use of EVM and the challenges before the Election Commission of India to ensure trustworthiness of elections. Now this particular word trustworthiness here becomes extremely important, as trustworthiness always has two sides, that is one who is conducting the election, that is the Election Commission of India, and on the other hand those electorates of voters who are participating in such elections. So in this respect, let's understand this entire controversy regarding the use of electronic voting machine which happened due to malfunctioning of VVPATs. Now this topic was extensively covered in our DNS videos as well as in the Focus magazine. So in this discussion, we'll understand what UPSC was trying to ask in this particular question, whether this particular issue was in news in recent times, and finally a suggestible answer structure for this particular question. Now, as far as the DNS video is concerned, this editorial on paper chase was covered in DNS video dated 31st May 2018, where we also put up a similar question with respect to malfunctioning of VVPAT. The question read, considering the recent glitches in the use of VVPAT, discuss the role of Election Commission in India in ensuring a smooth, fair and transparent elections in India. Now this particular question was framed while making the DNS video to highlight the malfunctioning of VVPAT machines, to highlight the challenges as well as to provide suitable measures by the Election Commission. In the same DNS of 31st May 2018, we also discussed the reasons for the malfunction with respect to sensitivity of VVPAT to extreme weather conditions and exposure to sunlight, and also with respect to relative inexperience of polling officials to handle such VVPAT. We also highlighted the key challenges with respect to conduct of upcoming state assembly as well as Lok Sabha elections, where we mentioned that they face a challenge that VVPAT machines do not malfunction considering the extreme heat condition in such times, as the upcoming 2019 Lok Sabha elections would be held somewhere around end of April to that of May 2019, and in such times the temperatures in the country will be at its extreme. Further challenges before the Election Commission as highlighted in this DNS was that state assemblies and Lok Sabha elections were conducted on a larger scale as compared to the glitches which were encountered during the by-elections. So in our DNS videos, we have already tried to highlight the key challenges before the Election Commission for the upcoming assembly as well as Lok Sabha elections, including the extreme weather condition in April-May of 2019. Further, another news appeared on VVPAT glitches which was covered on DNS video dated 29th May 2018, that is 2 days prior to the one discussed above. Further, the role of Election Commission was also explained in the DNS dated 19 January 2018, where Article 324 was comprehensively explained with respect to superintendence, direction as well as control of elections to be vested in an Election Commission. In January, this issue was in news with respect to CEC, that is Chief Election Commissioner, as well as with respect to VVPAT as well as EVM. Now coming to the Focus magazine, this issue of malfunctioning of VVPAT was covered in the June 2018 edition, where we highlighted about the malfunctioning of VVPAT in the recently concluded by-polls. Now this issue of delay as well as repolling became a cause of harassment not only for the polling officials but also for the voters who participated in such election. It further said that this incident has raised questions on the efficacy of electronic voting machines and VVPAT for the upcoming state assembly and Lok Sabha elections. So in this article, we explained about the VVPAT system, where we said that VVPAT is a method of providing feedback to voters using a ballotless voting system. And VVPAT is intended as an independent verification system for electronic voting machines. So basically the purpose of using VVPAT machines is that of having a more transparent process and also to ensure authenticity of the votes being casted. Thus, the glitch in the VVPAT questioned not only the transparency of the votes but also the authenticity of the votes being casted. Hence, the entire issue became important and controversial with respect to role of election commission and its creditworthiness. In this aspect, it's also important to know the Supreme Court verdict on VVPAT, where in a PIL filed in 2013, the Supreme Court directed the Election Commission of India to introduce VVPAT in a phased manner. So after this particular judgment, the Election Commission of India started using VVPAT machines in selected parliamentary and assembly constituencies. Now recently, the Election Commission of India has confirmed that VVPAT shall be used in all parliamentary constituencies for conduct of elections to Lok Sabha in 2019. So we understand that for the upcoming 2019 Lok Sabha polls, VVPAT shall be used in all constituency. Hence, it becomes equally important and responsible for the Election Commission to ensure that these VVPATs do not malfunction. Else, the entire issue of transparency as well authenticity of the entire electoral process will be questioned. Now in this article, we also mentioned about reasons of malfunctioning disclosed by the Election Commission. It says that a preliminary fact-finding report submitted to EC indicated that two sensors of the EVM malfunctioned, namely the contrast sensor as well as the lens sensor, and also it malfunctioned due to sensitivity to extreme weather conditions and exposure to sunlight. Further, the report also blamed the relative inexperience of polling officers to handle such VVPAT as compared to their experience in handling the ballot papers. So after this particular glitch, the Election Commission has asked its manufacturers, that is Electronics Corporation of India Limited, as well as BEL, that is Bharat Electronics Limited, as well as the Technical Expert Committee of the Election Commission to suggest additional design improvements, including suggestions in the layout of the EVMs. So one aspect what we understand is that Election Commission can ask the manufacturers to ensure that these glitches do not occur again. So the technical aspect includes identification of problem as well as providing solution to such problems identified. Another important fact to be highlighted is that Election Commission has also suggested to further strengthen and streamline the training programs of polling officials, because it is these polling officials who will handle such VVPATs in booths where elections are to be conducted. So the key challenges what we understand with respect to VVPAT is that first of all its technical aspect, that is identification of problem and providing solution, then proper training of these polling officials so that they understand the technical working of these VVPATs, and further to handle such VVPATs after election is being conducted. So all these aspects with respect to VVPAT and its glitches becomes extremely important. Now in the Focus magazine, we also provide you with certain editorial sections where we cover important editorials on important issues which has appeared in the newspaper, and we try to provide you a practicable mains question so that you can understand how questions can be framed and what are the issues involved in this particular question. So in this June edition of Focus magazine, in the editorial section, this question was framed with respect to malfunctioning of VVPAT. The question was, Election Commission cannot afford malfunctioning of VVPAT during the upcoming State Assembly and Lok Sabha elections. Suggest measures that must be taken by the Commission to ensure conduct of free, fair and transparent elections in India. Again, in the editorial section in the July edition of Focus magazine, we try to provide another mains question based on this editorial of Paper Chase, need for a review of VVPAT. The question was, it is the responsibility of Election Commission of India to ensure free, fair and transparent election in India. In light of the above statement, discuss the challenges regarding the conduct of elections in India and suggest suitable measures to overcome the said challenges. So we understand that we have tried to analyze not only the issue with respect to VVPAT but also the role of election commission and the challenges which it might face in the future upcoming elections. So finally, coming back to the answer structure, as we have already mentioned, that in order to understand a question, it's important to highlight the keywords asked in a particular question. In this, the keywords can be controversy, use of VVPAT, challenges before the election commission, and also to ensure trustworthiness of elections. So for this particular question, where it asked in the light of recent controversy regarding use of electronic voting machines, what are the challenges before the Election Commission of India to ensure trustworthiness of elections in India? In this, you could have mentioned all these suggestible points which you could have included in your answer writing, starting with the role of Election Commission, as the question was asking not only about the challenges but also with respect to trustworthiness of elections. And as we have mentioned, that trustworthiness accounts on both sides, that is on sides of the one who is conducting the election and sides of the one who is participating in such election, that is the voters. So you could have started by saying that role of election commission in conducting a free, fair and transparent election is central to India's electoral democracy. Heart of India's democratic process encompasses regular and periodic elections with participation of electorates with free will and without any due fear. So, in order to safeguard this core value of free and fair elections, it is the responsibility of EC to ensure a smooth, just, unbiased election process with greater citizen participation. So, it is only this that the trustworthiness in the electoral process will further strengthen. You could have then mentioned about the controversy relating to the malfunctioning of VVPAT during the recently held by-polls of Lok Sabha and Assembly seats. Then you could have said that the purpose of use of PVPAT is that of transparency and authenticity of casting of votes. As it is because of this that use of VVPAT actually started. And this is why Supreme Court in an order had asked the Election Commission of India to ensure that all the constituencies in the upcoming 2019 assembly elections must have a VVPAT. Then you could have mentioned the malfunctioning of VVPAT, which affected the ongoing electoral process, caused delay, and also resulted in harassment of voters. And this malfunctioning of VVPAT effectively led to the question of working of EVMs having VVPAT in upcoming assembly and Lok Sabha elections, considering the fact that these by-polls were on a very small scale, whereas these upcoming assembly and Lok Sabha elections will be held on a very large and grand scale. So the key challenges before the election commission is that of the scale of the upcoming election, that is the upcoming assembly election will be on large scale, whereas in the upcoming 2019 Lok Sabha election would be on a very grand scale in the entire country. Another key challenge is with respect to heat in the country, as the upcoming 2019 election will be conducted in the month of April to May, where temperatures will be at its extreme. So the issue of heat and exposure to sunlight of these EVMs becomes another key challenge for election commission to overcome. Another key challenge is that of handling of these EVMs by the polling officials, where their proper training becomes necessary for them to become aware of not only the technical glitches or the technical requirements of these machines, but also the administrative handling of these machines. And lastly, the working of these VVPAT. That is, the election commission must ensure that the manufacturers sort out all the problems with respect to its malfunctioning. So all these measures adopted by EC can effectively ensure a smooth election process. And a smooth election process will further improve the credibility of election commission in conducting free, fair and transparent election in an unbiased manner. And in this, the Election Commission has also ordered for a special anti-humidity thermal paper rolls procured for VVPAT. So all these are some of the measures taken by the Election Commission to ensure a free election process. And all these points could have been included in your answer writing. So we understand what this question which was asked by UPSC was, whether this was in controversy or not, and what could be its probable answer structure. With this, let's move on to our daily news discussions. The first news to be discussed is with respect to the ongoing turf war in the Central Bureau of Investigation with respect to its top two senior most officers. So in this respect, this particular news appears on page number 1 as an editorial on page number 6 and also as a continuation on page number 9. On page number 1, the news reads Supreme Court sets deadline for Verma probe, curbs powers of Rao. An inquiry will be conducted under the supervision of former Supreme Court Judge A.K. Patnaik. The editorial mentions about diffusing tensions, where the Supreme Court's interim order paves the way for a quick resolution of CBI crisis. On page number 9, it says the Supreme Court puts CVC Verma on a tight leash and ensures fair investigation without causing any delay. So, this news pertaining to the turf war going on between the top two senior most officials of CBI has been going on in the news for quite some days. So, after the senior two police officials were involved in charges of corruptions against each other, the government of India sent both these officers on leave and appointed M. Nageshwar Rao as an interim CBI chief. Now, the government of India took this decision on the recommendation of CVC, that is, Chief Vigilance Commission. So, this entire news highlights the problems plaguing the CBI with respect to political interference in their day to day work, their functional autonomy with respect to decision making ability without any interference, as well as with respect to institutional regulation, specifically from CVC, that is, Central Vigilance Commission. In your prelims examination, this topic forms a part of Indian polity and governance, and in your mains, it forms a part of GS paper 2, specifically under statutory, regulatory, and various quasi judicial bodies. So, as mentioned, this editorial highlights the turf war going between the two senior-most IPS officers of the Central Bureau of Investigation. And currently, both these senior officers have been sent on leave by the government as per the recommendation of Central Vigilance Commissioner. Thus, this editorial, as well as other news which have been appearing for the last few days, highlights the pervasive corruption which has surfaced at CBI involving its senior most officials. And this has put the institution, that is the CBI, in poor light with respect to important cases which the CBI is currently investigating. So, the entire controversy in this turf war is specifically with reference to free and fair functioning of CBI officials, especially its senior two officials, that is the director as well as the special director. Another controversy which arose in this case was how to insulate the tenure of 2 years of CBI director as per section 4B of DPSE Act 1946, that is Delhi Special Police Establishment Act. And another controversy is also with respect to impact of functioning of CBI officials on vested interest both within the institution as well as outside the institutions. So these are summarily the entire controversy with respect to the functioning of CBI. And this turf war between the senior most officers of the Central Bureau of Investigation has put the institution not only in bad light but has also raised the question of independent functioning of this institution. So in this aspect, let us also understand about the basics of Central Bureau of Investigation. It says that the CBI traces its origin to the Special Police Establishment, which was set up in 1941 by the Government of India. And this SPE, that is Special Police Establishment, was to investigate cases of bribery and corruption in transactions with the War and Supply Department of India during the World War II. So primarily, the CBI was constituted during the World War to investigate cases of bribery and corruption in transactions with the War and Supply Department. Then in 1946, the government enacted the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act 1946, which provided for the constitution of special force for the investigation of offences alleged to have been committed under the Prevention of Corruption Act 1988. Now this information becomes very important with respect to the functioning of CBI, that it investigate offences alleged to have been committed under the Prevention of Corruption Act 1988. In this aspect, let us also learn about the appointment of CBI Director under section 4A of this DPSE Act 1946. So the Director of CBI is appointed through a committee, and this committee consists of Prime Minister as the chairperson, the leader of opposition recognized, or where there is no leader of opposition, the leader of the single largest opposition party in the House as a member, and also the Chief Justice of India or Judge of Supreme Court as nominated by the Chief Justice of India. So this is how the director of CBI is appointed through a selection committee. So the selection committee with the Prime Minister as its chairperson and the leader of opposition as well as the Chief Justice of India appoints the director of CBI. And section 4B of DPSC Act ensures the tenure of 2 years for the CBI director. It says that the director shall continue to hold office for a period of not less than 2 years from the date on which he assumes office. And further, it says the director shall not be transferred except with the previous consent of the committee. So, if a director who has been appointed is to be transferred, then the consent of the committee comprising of these members must be taken. So, this becomes a very important information with respect to Director of Central Bureau of Investigation. Now, Section 4C of DPSC Act again provides for appointment of officers of the level of Superintendent of Police and above except Director. So any appointment apart from the director shall also be done on the recommendation of a committee consisting of Central Vigilance Commissioner as the chairperson, Vigilance Commissioners as members, Secretary to the Government of India also as members, and also Secretary to the Government of India in charge of DOPT, that is Department of Personnel, as members. So we understand that appointment of other senior members is also done through a committee headed by the Central Vigilance Commissioner as chairperson. So after understanding the basics on DPSC and appointment of CBI director, let us come back to this particular case where the government of India sent both the CBI director as well as the special director of CBI on leave. And the government has appointed senior IPS officer M. Nageshwar Rao as its interim CBI chief. Now Mr. Alok Verma, the CBI director, on his removal had filed a petition in Supreme Court and had also challenged the legality of government's decision regarding his removal. The Supreme Court in its judgment yesterday has asked the CVC to complete its inquiry into the allegations of graft as well as misconduct against Mr. Alok Verma and has asked the CVC to submit its report within 2 weeks. Now this allegation on Mr. Verma against graft and misconduct was on the basis of a letter from Cabinet Secretary about a complaint received in August 2018. And this inquiry on Mr. Alok Verma shall be conducted by the CVC under the supervision of former Supreme Court Judge Justice A.K. Patnaik. On the newly appointed CBI Interim Director M. Nageshwar Rao, the Supreme Court has said that he shall not take any policy decision and shall take only routine decisions which are necessary for the day-to-day functioning of the CBI. In this aspect, the Supreme Court has also asked all decisions taken by the incumbent CBI Interim Director from 23rd October 2018, including that of transfer of investigations, to be placed before the Supreme Court on its next hearing, which has been scheduled on 12th November 2018. By giving its judgment, the Supreme Court has served two purposes. First, that it has addressed the CVC's grouse that the CBI director was obstructing the investigations conducted by CVC and was also refusing cooperation in that manner. And secondly, it has ensured that Mr. Alok Verma is also given a fair opportunity against his petitions, which has challenged the legality of his removal. The Supreme Court, on Mr. Verma's petition that his removal was illegal as the concerned committee was not consulted under DPSC Act, the Supreme Court has stated that first the cloud of charges, that is allegation of graft as well as misconduct over Mr. Verma, must be cleared first. The court would then proceed to ascertain whether the order of the government breached any legal process as mandated by the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act 1946. Now this particular news is in transition, so let's wait for the Supreme Court judgment in its next hearing, as the CVC will submit its report with respect to allegations of graft and misconduct against Mr. Verma, and only then the court would proceed to ascertain whether the order of the government breached any legal process with respect to his removal. So we understand that this particular issue with respect to CBI has been in news and will continue to be so in some time. So let's wait for the further Supreme Court judgment in this regard. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next news appears on page number 18 The news reads, migratory birds start arriving at Chilika, but numbers are down. This particular news mentions that migratory birds have started arriving at the wetlands of Orissa's Chilika Lake. As you can see in this map, the location of Chilika Lake, which is on the coast of Bay of Bengal. However, the news mentions that this year, by now, there are less turnout of birds even in Nalabana Bird Sanctuary as well as in the Mangaljori, which is considered to be the birds congregate. Now, this particular topic forms a part of general issues on environmental ecology as well as biodiversity. Now, this news mentions that one of the reasons for less turnout of these birds at Chilika Lake by now is because of flooding after the cyclone Titli on the coast of Orissa, and also because of the fact of lack of exposure of mud flats, that is coastal wetlands that forms when mud is deposited by tides or rivers, as you can see in this photographs, as these can be said to be mud flats. The cyclone Titli flooded these mud flaps, so these birds might be waiting for these mud flaps to get bit dry and to expose themselves. Hence, lack of exposure of these mud flats also becomes one of the reasons for less turnout of birds at Chilika Lake by now. Now, in this aspect, let us also learn certain basic facts with respect to Chilika Lake. It mentions that Chilika Lake comprises marine, brackish as well as freshwater ecosystem. So it comprises of marine ecosystem, brackish ecosystem as well as freshwater ecosystem. Now this becomes very important with respect to our prelims examination. It further says that it is a shallow lagoon. Now, what is a lagoon? A lagoon is a body of water separated from large body of water like sea. As you can see in this map, this is what a lagoon is, and Chilika Lake is an example of a lagoon. It further mentions that Chilika Lake is the largest lagoon in India. Now this again becomes a key fact with respect to our prelims examination. Further, Chilika Lake is the largest watering ground for migratory waterfowl in the Indian subcontinent. As far as its location is concerned, it is located in Puri, Khurda as well as Ganjam district of Orissa, and it is fed by 52 rivers as well as rivulets. And we have also mentioned about this Nalabana Bird Sanctuary. It says the large Nalabana island covering around 16 square kilometers in the lagoon area was declared a bird sanctuary in the year 1987. So all these becomes extremely important information with respect to Chilika Lake. Further, it says that migratory birds have been protected under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, and Chilika Lake is also a designated Ramsar site, that is, it is a wetland of international importance. Further, Chilika Lake is also home to Irrawaddy dolphins, which is listed as endangered under IUCN list. And this lake was also included in the Montreux record, which consists of threatened list in 1993. However, this lake was removed from this Montreux record in 2002 due to successful restoration by Chilika Development Authority, and it was the first site to be removed from Montreux record. So again, all these informations with respect to Montreux record becomes critically important. As you can see, this particular question on Montreux record was asked in the year 2014 in your prelims examination. The question read, if a wetland of international importance is brought under the Montreux record, what does it imply? The correct answer in this was A. It says changes in ecological character have occurred, are occurring, or are likely to occur in the wetland as a result of human interference. So in this aspect, this key information with respect to Montreux record about Chilika Lake becomes important, that the lake was included in Montreux record in 1993. However, it was removed from the Montreux record in 2002 due to successful restoration by Chilika Development Authority, and it was the first site to be removed from this Montreux record. So all these information with respect to protection status of Chilika Lake also becomes extremely important from a prelims perspective. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next news appears on page number 5. The news reads, 7 suspected anthrax cases in Andhra Pradesh. one 50-year-old slips into coma in critical condition. In this particular news, 7 people in state of Andhra Pradesh have been suspected to have symptoms of anthrax. And this topic in your prelims examination forms a part of general science. So in this aspect, let's understand certain basic facts with respect to this anthrax. As previously, questions have been asked by UPSC on prevalent diseases. So it mentions that anthrax is an infectious zoonotic disease and is primarily a disease of herbivorous mammals. Now these two facts becomes extremely important with respect to anthrax. That is, it is a zoonotic disease and is a disease of herbivorous mammals, particularly cattle, sheep, goats, horses, as well as mules. It says that although other mammals and some birds have been known to contract it. So humans acquire this disease either directly or indirectly from the infected animals. Further, humans may acquire this anthrax on occupational exposure to infected or contaminated animal products. Further, the infection can occur through breathing in anthrax spores or eating tainted meat. So all these becomes one of the key sources to acquire this anthrax disease. Further, anthrax bacteria can survive in the environment by forming spores. So all these information with respect to anthrax becomes extremely important. Now there are 3 types of anthrax, that is cutaneous or skin anthrax, gastrointestinal anthrax, as well as inhalation or pulmonary anthrax. So the skin anthrax is the most common form and it is usually contracted when a person with a break in their skin, such as a cut or abrasion, comes into direct contact with anthrax spores. Further, gastrointestinal anthrax is caught from eating meat from an infected animal, and inhalation or pulmonary anthrax is the most severe form of human anthrax, and this form of disease is caused when a person is directly exposed to a large number of anthrax spores suspended in the air. So these 3 types of anthrax again becomes a important information with respect to your prelims examination. One is with respect to cutaneous or skin anthrax, second is with respect to gastrointestinal anthrax, and third is with respect to pulmonary anthrax, which is caused through inhalation. Now another important aspect with respect to anthrax is that it can be considered as an important biological warfare agent as it is highly fatal when transmitted through inhalation. Further, anthrax spores can remain viable for several decades and can be easily produced in large quantities at a very low cost. So this again becomes extremely significant as these anthrax can be procured and produced as a biological warfare. Further, it says that it is easy to weaponize and disseminate anthrax as an odorless and invisible aerosol and can be used to affect thousands of people at the same time. So this anthrax can be weaponized as a biological warfare. So again in this aspect we must know certain basic facts with respect to anthrax. So these people having symptoms of anthrax becomes an important piece of information with respect to a UPSC examination. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next news appears in the editorial section and also appears on page number 10. In the editorial section it mentions touching base. Now PM Modi's visit to Japan should clarify the shared reading of a changing world order. And the news on page number 10 reads China-Japan pivot to new markets, where it says Shinzo Abe says bilateral relations are moving to a new stage of cooperation from competition. So in this news, we see a growing relation between India and Japan and also an improving relation of Japan with that of. So let's understand this particular news in the current overview of India-Japan relationships in the context of upcoming Indian Prime Minister visit to Japan. In your prelims examination, this topic forms a part of current events of international importance, whereas in GS paper 2, it forms a part of international relations. This editorial also highlights the impact of US sanctions on India as well as Japan. It says that the impact of US sanctions on Russia as well as Iran has its impact both on India as well as on Japan. However, the article mentions that the impact on India is more direct, as Indian economy has been impacted by new US tariffs on India, review of its trading status, and restriction on visa for professionals visiting United States. Even the defense purchase of recent 400 advanced air defense system from Russia pose significant challenges with respect to US sanctions. So, in this aspect, the impact of US sanctions is more direct on India. As far as Japan is concerned, apart from the US trade tariff, Washington's exit from Trans Pacific Partnership has impacted the Asian economies under China's domination, and this has also impacted the Japanese economy. And further, the United States negotiation with North Korea on nuclear arsenal has put Japan on a tenterhook. So all these concerns impact both India as well as Japan. So in this aspect as well, this upcoming visit of the Prime Minister of India to Japan becomes extremely crucial and significant. So, considering the geopolitical compulsions with respect to United States and China, let's go through these following points with respect to upcoming Indo-Japanese relations. It says that Japan had earlier shown interest in investing with India in the Chabar port in Iran. However, it is not yet to be seen on whether would Japan would invest in Iran contrary to US sanctions. Another important aspect which can be kept in mind is that of India and Japan's common response against US tariffs as well as against growing US China trade war. Further, India Japan security cooperation in the Indo Pacific region in collaboration with this quadrilateral group. Now, this quadrilateral group comprises of four nations, namely US, India, Japan, as well as Australia. Further, Japan has also shown inclination to invest in China's Belt Road Initiative. Hence, Japan's cooperation with India in the alternative Asia Africa Growth Corridor is yet to be seen. So, this becomes another important aspect on which India and Japan can build upon in their relationship. Further, Indian purchase of US 2 amphibian aircraft from Japan is currently tied up in negotiations, and India and Japan may sign a military logistics pact similar to LEMOA that India has with US. Now, LEMOA stands for Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement. So all these aspects with respect to India-Japan relationship becomes important, and in this regard, the upcoming visit of the Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi becomes extremely crucial. Since this particular news is in transition, so let's wait for the Prime Minister's visit to Japan. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next news appears on page number 11. The news reads RBI to inject 40,000 crore in November as part of open market operation. The Reserve Bank of India has said that it will inject rupees 40,000 crore into the system through purchase of government security as it looks to meet the festive demands. In your prelims examination, this topic forms a part of economic and social development. Now, this injection of money by RBI into the system through purchase of government securities is also known as open market operations. So, the open market operations carried out by the RBI or a country's central bank basically pertains to purchase of government securities as well as sale of government securities. In case of purchase of government securities, the RBI or the central bank injects money into the banking system. So effectively, purchase of government securities by the RBI enhances liquidity in the market, whereas sale of government securities by the RBI or the central government contracts the economy, or in other words, decreases liquidity from the market. This concept of open market operations is important as a question on OMO has been asked by UPSC in 2013. Let's go through the question asked by UPSC in 2013. In the context of Indian economy, open market operation refers to first, borrowing by scheduled banks from the RBI. No. Lending by commercial banks to industry and trade. No. Purchase and sale of government securities by the RBI. Yes, this was the correct answer. Hence, we understand that this particular news where RBI hopes to inject 40,000 crore through open market operation becomes extremely significant from our UPSC perspective. With this, we come to an end to discussion of today's newspaper. Let's move on to the question for the day.